Welcome back. There is tension in Pakistan as Imran Khan has refused to call off what was supposed to be a million-man march towards the capital. However, Qadri, his partner in this mission, has called off his march. They've been asked to appear before the Supreme Court by tomorrow and asked to explain why they were marching in this fashion and disturbing law and order. The Pakistan Army, meanwhile, is readying for any eventuality as the 8 p.m. deadline given to Nawaz Sharif got over. Protesters are camped outside the Pakistan Parliament and have resolved to block entry and exit points till the time the Prime Minister resigns. There is, however, no confirmation that Nawaz Sharif is inside Parliament. Last night, thousands of protesters breached the VVIP red zone, as it has come to be called, using cranes and bolt cutters. They managed to breach the red zone and have camped there since last evening. The Interior Ministry has deployed the army to send a message that the Imran Khan-led protests do not have the backing of the military in a country prone to coups. Imran Khan is the leader of the third largest opposition party in Pakistan. His demand for Nawaz's resignation has been echoed by Qadri, a religious cleric based in Canada. None of Imran Khan's allies have joined in the protests, and most of the people in the crowd belong to Qadri's organization. This is now a fight for political currency for an already beleaguered Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Joining us now is Hamza Amir, our correspondent from Islamabad. He's been tracking the story very, very closely. With us also at this time is G. Parthasarthi, former High Commissioner to Pakistan. I want to go across to Hamza Amir first. Hamza, give our viewers the latest. Now that Qadri has called off his protest, Imran Khan seems to have been left in a lurch, but the former Pakistan cricketer doesn't seem to be backing off. What options does he really have, Hamza?
Well, Rahul, firstly, Qadri has not called off his protest. In fact, he has actually recommended change of names of the government committee that actually came to speak to him. He wanted the name of Saad Rafiq to be taken out because his name is in the FIR of the Model Town killing incident. So that is one side, but he is now talking. Even Imran Khan has given his 10-point agenda, out of which the first one is that he demands resignation of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. But other than that, the remaining 9 pointers are already agreed on by the government. They say that leave aside the resignation, but let's sit and talk on the other ones. He's also formed a committee.
I want to bring in G. Parthasarthi on your sense of this unfolding situation. Nawaz Sharif not backing down. He has no reason to back down. Imran Khan holding ground. Qadri as well, backing him to some extent. Where do you see the situation unfold from here?
Look, you are leaving out the most important party, the unseen one, which is the army. There have been contacts between Nawaz Sharif and the army. And one of Nawaz Sharif's aides told Reuters that the army is willing to help out if they are given quote unquote more space, which means a greater say in governance. Certainly the army has its reservations about Sharif's policies on the Musharraf trial. There are other reservations that Sharif has had about their policies on Waziristan. But basically what the army wants is that more space in the governance. I think the army is a major gainer because ultimately they are protecting the government buildings and the diplomatic corps, and they've made it very clear that if they pull back, Sharif has just had it, there's no way he can resist. So I think will be moving towards finding some via media, because I don't think Imran's call that the government should resign because some 15, 20, 25 seats or 30 seats, he has doubts about the credibility of the election, is not something people across Pakistan are going to buy.
Zafar Jaspal is joining us, political analyst from Pakistan. What's your reading of the situation? The big concern in India, of course, is whether there is a possibility of another military coup in Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif's relations with the Pakistani army have already been frayed. Is there any possibility at all that the army will try and use this situation to its advantage and maybe oust Nawaz Sharif and bring in someone who they believe is more pliant and more willing to listen to them?
I think that army certainly used this situation to increase its influence in the power politics of Pakistan, which was minus after the 2013 general election. But at the same time, I'm not looking that army stepping in, replacing the government and trying to come at the driving seat of the politics, because they try to control it through the indirect way, and that are the rumors. But on the other side, if you see last night, very categorically, the army spokesperson, the Major General stated that all the stakeholders should resolve this issue through the dialogue. And today, when the Chief Minister of Punjab, the Nawaz Sharif, met the army chief has also again reminded him that it's better sooner you can resolve this issue. So my understanding is that army is trying to convince the government that it should resolve the issue through the dialogue, but in a dialogue, of course, government then has to compromise many things which undermine Nawaz Sharif's supremacy in the parliament, as well as...
No, but this makes no sense. Given the fact that Imran Khan lost the last elections, and given the fact that 1 million people haven't marched out on the streets of Islamabad, if you actually see the number of people in those images, we're seeing the drone cameras that Headlines Today introduced to broadcasting in South Asia, now being used by Pakistani channels as well. If you see those images, there aren't 1 million people marching on the streets of Islamabad. This isn't as big a siege as Imran Khan and Tahir Qadri promised. Clearly, they don't enjoy very much support. Why then is Nawaz Sharif as rattled as it is appearing that he is? There aren't those many people. It isn't as big a threat as Imran Khan would like it to be.
I think our friend from Pakistan spelled it out correctly. The army in this is trying to seek the maximum advantage. Army is not interested in taking over the country, because governing Pakistan is becoming very difficult. The financial situation, if Sharif can't solve, army can't solve. And the Americans aren't going to pour in money as they were doing in the past. The IMF is putting very tough conditions. So the army would ideally want power sitting in the back, handling primarily relations with Afghanistan, with India, and in dealing with the situation in Waziristan. So the army, those days when the army would love to rule, they don't want to rule in a situation where the country is in such a bad shape. I think Imran, it's fairly well known that Tahir Qadri has very close links with the military. Imran as a party got started as a favorite of the military. I think I saw General Hamid Gul amongst the people who have been advising Imran. So you are into this situation where the army is leveraging this for its advantage, would not like to take over, but the danger is if they don't reach a compromise, then things could get out of hand.
I want to bring in also at this time Wajahat Khan, senior journalist writing out of Pakistan. Wajahat, what's your reading of the current situation? Is there a possibility that the army could want to take over, or are they actually using these problems to try and extract more leverage out of Nawaz Sharif?
I think it's the latter, Rahul, and it's good to be on. Thanks for having me on. Frankly, I agree with the assessment of your guest. I don't know who it is, but I think at this point, Pakistan is a big turf war, always has been. And of course, history has shown us, and shown this military as well, that every time it's ruled directly, that's ended up in disaster, either internally or geopolitically at large. And I think everybody's wisened up, more than anyone, the military itself, about the days of direct intervention and the infamous 111 Brigade charging down Constitution Avenue in Islamabad are gone. In fact, if you look back the last couple of weeks, the military has actually been not at the center stage of the controversial part of the spectrum. Rather, it has been the silent, strong type. The army chief has not missed a photo opportunity to show his support with the Prime Minister. They celebrated Independence Day together, went to the tenuous province of Balochistan together. The top brass has been by the side of the PM at these national events. So there haven't been any snubs from that famous building, the general headquarters in Rawalpindi. Frankly, and just last night, the army has once again emerged as the only voice of reason, really, where all the other political parties have failed. They have not risen above the din of back and forth between Khan, Qadri, and the Sharifs. the army's emerged as this sobering force, encouraging everyone to talk. And guess what? Talking has begun. And a couple of hours ago, the government finally reacted. It was rather lethargic. It should have done this weeks ago, frankly. But finally, the government has put together an ad hoc committee of negotiators with two or three ministers, three actually, top ministers who will be talking to both Khan and Qadri. So finally, the army's advice has been sobering for everyone, because it has come with a lot of gravitas. No politicization from the army's public relations wing. Of course, behind the scenes, whatever has happened can't be commented upon because we don't really know about it. There's been a lot of speculations about all of this being military backed, but they've been nothing but speculations. So yeah, a remarkably different army from even the last army of General Ashfaq Pervez, which ended up in a political back and forth with the PPP. This is not that army, obviously. So times have changed.
Wajah, thank you very much for joining us with your thoughts from Islamabad. I want to go back to Zafar Jaspal. Do you see Nawaz Sharif ride out this crisis, Mr. Jaspal? Do you believe that there is a very real threat that his government will fall?
I think that prior to today's development, I was a little bit worried about his stubborn attitude. But today, the way he tried to negotiate, and you know that one thing is clear to him, that if he is not going to engage and resolve this issue by himself, then the initiative will continuously go in the hand of the armed forces or somebody else, I mean the armed forces led people. And as a result, Nawaz Sharif will be the biggest sufferer. I think now he tried to resolve this issue and he will come out of this crisis, but of course when he will come out of his crisis, his position as a Prime Minister of Pakistan, who was believing that he has a simple majority and very strong, you can say, writ within the state, that has been exposed. If you see under 245 article, they invited the army for their own security, and even today they are not able to guard the major buildings without the support of the army. So 111 Brigade, which was used to came in Islamabad to control the political elite and change the regime, today it is there to defend the political elite, I mean the Prime Minister in Islamabad. So that's why I think Nawaz Sharif, the rationale will prevail, and Nawaz Sharif try to come out of this process through the dialogue.
Okay, you're saying that he will survive, but it will be a far diminished Nawaz Sharif.
And a far stronger army.
And a far stronger army, able to exert its influence once again. From the internal dimension of the problems in Pakistan, and I want to shift to the bilateral dimension between India and Pakistan. A day after India took the tough diplomatic step of calling off foreign secretary level talks with Pakistan, Pakistan's High Commissioner to India, Abdul Basit, addressed the media in Delhi and labelled the cancellation of talks a setback. Basit made all the right noises and vowed to work towards peace, but Delhi hit back, immediately announcing in no uncertain terms that there are only two stakeholders in the Kashmir issue.
Pak provokes again and again before preaching peace. After provoking India with repeated ceasefire violations and meetings with separatists, Pakistan High Commissioner to India launched into sermons, preaching peace and defiantly justifying the indefensible, emboldening the hardliners. The Ministry of External Affairs hit back within minutes.
As I told you, this has been a long-standing practice. We have been meeting Hurriyat leaders, Kashmiri leaders for now over decades. And our Foreign Office has very adequately articulated our position. So beyond that, I would not really like to add anything to that.
After the signing of the Simla Agreement by the Prime Minister of India and the Prime Minister of Pakistan, there are only two stakeholders on the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Those two stakeholders are the Union of India and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
Pakistan calmly indulged in plain doublespeak, advocating peace, stressing on normal ties, even asking for dialogue, all the while pointing fingers at India.
हमारी साइट के मुताबिक पिछले जुलाई से लेकर अब तक तकरीबन 57 दफ़ा 57 टाइम्स वायलेशन हुई है भारत की साइड से, और हमने 10 दिन पहले डिमार्च भी किया था इंडियन गवर्नमेंट को इन इस्लामाबाद.
With the Indo-Pak ties in a limbo, there is a strong likelihood of Indo-Pak UNGA talks being called off. India is clearly firm on a no to Hurriyat policy as the clamour to send Basit back grows. The biggest question, however, would Pakistan have allowed a similar press conference on its own soil by an Indian envoy?
India is extremely cut up with Pakistan for continuing to meddle in India's internal affairs and engage with the Hurriyat despite India saying do not do so. But as Abdul Basit, Pakistan's High Commissioner to India, said, diplomacy is the art of the possible. The ball now in Pakistan's court to mend fences. With cameraman Satinder Bhati, Gaurav Sawant in Delhi for Headlines Today.
Now that the Hurriyat has been used as a reason to call off Foreign Secretary level talks between India and Pakistan, does this also mean that the New York talks, the much anticipated New York talks during Prime Minister Modi's first visit to the United States on the sidelines of the UNGA will also be cancelled? Zafar Jaspal is with us. Sambit Patra from the BJP joins our discussion. We've got G. Parthasarathi, former High Commissioner. I want to go across first to Sambit Patra. Sambit, what is the government's plan now? Is it to be taken to be understood that any discussion, any possibility of there being a meeting between Nawaz Sharif and Prime Minister Modi in New York is now off the table?
I think two things have to be taken to account over here. First and foremost, in diplomacy, no one can preempt. So I over here right now cannot preempt as to what is going to happen after a few days. I cannot do that. Secondly, and most importantly, a broad roadmap of the Indo-Pak diplomatic stand has been laid down by Mr. Narendra Modi's government, in the sense that this government has quite clearly stated that if Pakistan is going to meddle with the internal affairs of this country, India is not going to take it lying down. But first and foremost, the caveat is India is in want of a friendship relationship with Pakistan, and that's the reason as to why this government had invited Mr. Nawaz Sharif along with the other SAARC leaders.
To my question, I'm sorry, you're speaking without answering my question. Am I to believe that the New York talks, Sambit Patra, are now cancelled? Answer just this question.
I believe no intelligent diplomatic person would be able to answer your question in specifics, because diplomacy can never be preempted. Let us wait and watch as to what happens, but broadly the roadways have been laid that we are not going to move ahead unless Pakistan heeds to what the real demands of India are.
Okay, G. Parthasarathi, a new red line has been laid, but I spoke to Sartaj Aziz, Pakistan's foreign minister. This is not possible for us to accept at all. There's no question of our leaders or our foreign secretary or our high commissioner not meeting Hurriyat leaders. They believe they're an integral part of the Kashmir problem. Given that that red line is not acceptable to Kashmir, is it to be taken to mean that there's no question of Nawaz Sharif and Modi meeting in New York?
I think if that is what he says, then what the spokesman says holds true. There is no third party. If this High Commissioner, look, under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, if the High Commissioner indulges in activities incompatible with his status, he has a right to be expelled. Now that can happen in several cases. 2003, we threw out the Deputy High Commissioner, Jalil Abbas Jalani, along with 3 other people, for actually giving money to a Hurriyat representative, some 5 lakhs, and she got caught red-handed. There are several other contacts they have with the Hurriyat, which is best not discussed in public, which are very shady. I think we've been rather shown a lot of forbearance. And I think the message went to Mr. Nawaz Sharif, don't meet the Hurriyat. They disregarded that. If the High Commissioner disregards it again, out he goes. You should have no hesitation in declaring him persona non grata if you are going to enforce your position on this.
So what happens to India-Pakistan dialogue and the relationship,
just a minute,
which is clearly deadlocked at this time?
Just a minute. India-Pakistan relations have often been deadlocked. There are always channels of communication, okay? Those channels of communication are conventional and unconventional. And I think the message now should go to Pakistan that let's be real. How would you respond if we met with members of the Baluch Liberation Army or the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan? These messages need to go very firmly. Take your choice. Because we could say there are more parties to the Baluch situation or to the Durand line. So I think Delhi will be thinking this through and with a considered response. They are not going to make it public at this stage, but certainly there is, I think, a broad consensus. I am happy between the two parties that this Hurriyat tamasha has to end. The fact of the matter is they represent nobody. The fact of the matter is that they have received money from their Deputy High Commissioner who was thrown out. So
Zafar Jaspal, what's the reading in Pakistan? Do you believe that there is any possibility at all that Nawaz Sharif and Prime Minister Modi could still meet in New York, or do you believe ties are deadlocked now for the foreseeable future?
I think that Pakistani Prime Minister obviously desires to meet him because he was the person who took this initiative to build a good relation with India. And at the same time, in Pakistan, there is a big critique on his policy that why he didn't meet the Hurriyat when he visited India officially, because traditionally, whenever Pakistani Prime Minister or any official statement takes place, Hurriyats are always treated as a part. It's another thing that if you start drawing the analogy with the Baloch movement or the Al-Qaeda, they are not a legitimate part. Pakistan is not meeting anyone in India like what we call it Indian New Mujahideen or somebody in the nationalite movement. We are only people who are from the disputed territory and which has been recognized under the United Nations UN resolution. So that's why when I think that in Pakistan, though Nawaz Sharif desires, but there will be a big pressure on him.
Difference. We don't accept it as a dispute. Neither the Simla Agreement nor the Lahore Declaration speak of it as a dispute, and we will certainly not have any foreigner messing around with separatists.
No, but what Modi hasn't been able to explain satisfactorily is how is it that under Vajpayee and under Manmohan Singh, Pakistan ministers, their foreign secretary, the High Commissioner have always met Hurriyat leaders.
We have laid down new red lines. That is it.
New red lines.
Yes. Pakistan either accepts it.
Can I answer this?
Either they accept it or we go along.
No, but Sambit, this is an important question that every person in Pakistan, when I spoke to Sartaj Aziz, this is exactly what he said. But we've done it in the past. What's the big deal? And if previous governments didn't have a problem, why is it that this government has a problem? That's an argument that Pakistan offers. To which Modi doesn't seem to have a very convincing answer. Even under Vajpayee, even Musharraf came.
What we do within our country,
Rahul, the issue is
none of
if a tradition was wrong all these years, if a ritual was wrong all these years, there is no compulsion as to why a wrong ritual should be continued, first. Secondly, and most importantly, if you remember, the last time 2013 also, when the Pakistani envoy met the Hurriyat leaders, I believe Mr. Salman Khurshid, who was the then External Affairs Minister, expressed his displeasure. So every government has been expressing the displeasure on the Pakistan envoys meeting Hurriyat leaders, but this government had the spine to draw the red lines, and I believe this is a welcome move. Why should we allow the Pakistan envoy to meet someone whom we believe are separatists, who are doing harm to our constitutional position? And as rightly pointed out by the MEA spokesperson, there is no third party. We have a Shimla agreement, we have a Lahore declaration.
Okay, I'm going to leave it over there.
Stakeholder. So what is the reason?
Sambit Patra, Zafar Jaspal and G. Parthasarthi for joining us tonight. Thank you very much. No one is saying so openly at this time, but there is almost no possibility at all of Nawaz Sharif and Prime Minister Modi meeting, given the fact that the Foreign Secretary level dialogue was cancelled by India because the High Commissioner went out and met with Hurriyat leaders, leading to the question, what happens next to India and Pakistan? G. Parthasarthi says we will find our way around. As of now, there is a deadlock. A new red line has been drawn. We've seen with all the appeasement under the Manmohan Singh government, nothing got achieved. This is a new hawkish Prime Minister, a new tough line in Pakistan, which many people had been asking for. Let's see where that leads India and Pakistan. Thank you all for joining us tonight. That's all we have time for on our broadcast this evening. I look forward to seeing you at 9:30 p.m. tomorrow evening. A quick programming note tomorrow. We play out the results of the India Today Mood of the Nation opinion poll, the most definitive opinion poll, which gives our viewers a sense of the mood in the country at this time. Has Prime Minister Modi been able to build on his popularity between May and now? Has his popularity slipped? Do people believe that Achhe Din are finally here? Find out the answers to all these questions in our Mood of the Nation opinion poll special, which comes to you at 9:30 p.m. tomorrow evening. Thank you for tuning in tonight.